Right. Welcome. How extraordinary are the events of the Wellington City Council, eh?
Look, I just think that just when, as you said, just when you think you've seen it all, something else turns up, and the whole determined engine that's, driving forward has a go at you because a Democratic majority wants to change its mind. And it's simply as simple as that. And yet the system, it's like there's layers to this whole thing. And so the bottom line is that
Tony, you've done a sort of 1 to 8 list for me this morning. Can you just take us through this on the same way that you've laid it out for me? And everybody that's listening, and both live and later on our various social media and platforms, just listen to this if you want madness illustrated and amplified. Tony, let's start number one. You're talking about the Wellington City Council and the sale of the shares that the Wellington City Council holds in Wellington Airport. It's about 34% of the current shareholding, is that correct?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, right. And there's a special council meeting in 2 days' time. There are several issues with the decision, and off you go, mate. You go for your life.
So, the airport was consulted in the long-term plan, and the decision was made to sell the airport shares, and I supported that decision on condition that they kept some money aside for future resilience funding.
A rainy day.
They didn't do that. They've spent their money. And now we've joined the people who oppose it, mostly Labour-led, but there's an important Green councillor, Councillor Winera, who are passionate and on principle, on their principles to not sell assets. And so now a majority are against selling the airport shares. It's 9-7, so it's close, but it's a clear majority. Then you get to the real politic of things. And I just want to tell the story because this is what really, really happens when things get tight around a big decision. We have, and we've talked about it before, we've had this Office of Legal Opinion that these decisions have to go through a committee. And on that committee, there are also two iwi reps who largely support the Mayor in trying to sell the airport shares. And so that makes the vote 9-9, with the Chair supporting the airport shares. So if you put it through the long-term plan committee, the airport shares will be sold, even though a majority of elected members are against it.
Sorry, just before you get to there, how did those iwi reps get onto the committee? They are, I assume, not elected by the populace at large. So how does Wellington City Council have two non-elected iwi reps sitting on its planning committee or whatever it might be?
So, good question. We have the Wellington City Council, like most councils in fact, have a Maori partnership agreement. And part of that agreement is that the two main iwi, that's Ngāti Toa and Taranaki Whānau in Wellington, each get to appoint a representative, and that representative has a vote on this committee. And so they're appointed as part of our Maori partnership.
Right. Okay,
so,
thank you.
As I was saying, if the committee is in favour of selling the airport shares with the two iwi reps, and the council itself is against selling it, and the officers are saying we can't make this decision without involving this committee, unless we get rid of undo the delegations that we did. So we did a notice of motion, and in that notice of motion, there's the decision to say we no longer want to sell the airport shares, and by the way, we're taking away this delegation to this subcommittee so that the council elected representatives make the final decision.
That seems democracy to me.
Over the last week...
Yeah,
well, it seems straightforward to me as well. In the last week, the iwi reps have they've more than objected. they have absolutely, I'm not sure what the right phrase is. Spat the dummy is one phrase that comes to mind, but it's not quite respectful enough. No, that they are absolutely livid, and they have threatened to walk away from the Māori partnership, to quit the council, if they are not involved in this vote. They are insisting on being involved with this vote. And this has put the elected Māori representative in a very big dilemma, because Nika Winera, who is passionate about not selling the airport shares, he's a Green Party councillor, but he also is passionate about the Māori partnership. And he has previously said that he's no longer going to vote. He's changing his mind. He's he is in a rock and a hard place. And so all of a sudden we're now uncertain. This elected majority is uncertain because the iwi reps have said this is a matter of principle. This is a matter of treaty, honouring treaty. And so it's taken the whole debate to a new level. And of course, I find it very, very disconcerting. I don't want this decision to become a decision about democracy versus the treaty. But they're so determined, it seems, to sell the airport shares that they're willing to go there. And so, which way is Nikau going to vote on Thursday? We don't know. Even though he's against it, he is sort of trapped. But there's even worse. So that's the big decision. That's the big debate. And it's becoming about what are the rights of Maori to override the will of the elected majority. And for me, that is wrong. That's when you're really starting to say, and the Local Government Act says that it's only up to the council can sell assets, and then we've got this backdoor way where it's going to happen. And I just find it very, very difficult to get my head around that this is really happening to me, a new councillor at this council, and all of a sudden we're into this whole big debate. But it gets even worse. There's even more layers to this, because one of the other proponents of the airport sale is Councillor Tim Brown. Now, Tim Brown worked for Infratil. He was actually chair of Wellington Airport, and I understand he owns millions of shares in the airport through Infratil. And yet,
what you mean, he owns it personally, or he owns it through? He owns it personally, or through Infratil?
He owns it. Infratil has a company called Morrison something or other that holds a lot of Infratil shares, a very large number. And so, but he's got a stake he's got a serious stake. I mean, he's a millionaire through this sort of investment. And so he could gain or lose money. I'm not sure if he will, but he has certainly a very big interest in the outcome, a personal interest, a financial interest. And yet he's got legal advice that he's not conflicted and he can vote on this. And so you've got this dimension as well.
So somebody's sure going to test that if the vote goes the wrong way, aren't they? Later on. I think so. But of course, the mayor needs his vote. Otherwise, the council changes its decision. And I tell you, and as I said, we're now up to 7. It's still not finished, because the issue's also been raised about whether or not the iwi representatives themselves are conflicted, because one of the two iwi, Taranaki Whānau, I understand, has expressed an interest in buying the shares. So their representative of an iwi who may want to buy the shares is voting to sell them. And is that a conflict of interest? So we have this, we've got this huge, and then behind the scenes, I have to say too, the officers have let us down, because they've also changed the rules. They've changed the numbers around on what the impact of not selling the shares would be. They're now saying it's going to create, they've changed the numbers. It used to be that we needed to keep aside about $276 million. And now they're saying we have to keep aside $500 million if we don't sell the shares. Even the price of the shares seems to have nearly doubled in terms of, and of course,
the more that if we don't sell the shares, the more we've got to cut programs to come up and with the resilience money, the rainy day fund, I've called it in the past. The money that you don't spend on your credit card in case you need an emergency. So this is what this money is, resilience money.